Hi everyone, welcome to the Red Room. It's February, Wednesday the 24th, 2010, and we are talking about communication in relationships. Today I've got two things that I want to share with you, and ask me any questions you like, whether or not they're related to these parts of communication. First of all, the one we talked about last time was the first element of listening. And there are 7, so we're going to cover 2 and 3 today. But last time was first understand, be curious, which means listen to the other person, elicit, ask. And there is a special technique that some people teach called spiritual companioning, which means it has to do with not telling anybody else what they're saying or trying to mirror or interpret. It's called emptying the cup, which means asking and being curious, learning more. That's the one we talked about last time. Today, the first one I want to mention is eye contact. Have you ever been at one of those, a cocktail party or some kind of a social event where there are people in the room and you're just randomly talking to the people that you come across? Some of them you know, some of them you don't. I know some people feel real nervous in that situation. I like to walk into a room and just see which person first comes to me. At any rate, the part of listening that's really important is eye contact. So have you spoken with somebody and they're chatting with you, but while they're chatting, their eyes kind of look around and then they're talking to you. They're kind of listening to you, but they're looking to see if there's somebody more attractive or interesting or more prestigious or somebody else that they'd rather be talking to other than you, and how disrespectful that feels. Expert communicators don't divide their attention. So they don't divide their attention between listening and something else. They understand that to do something well, they have to give it their undivided attention. Expert listeners make eye contact when they listen. They are also sensitive to the courtesy and respectful behavior in paying attention. And remember, one of the definitions of love that I think is most important is that it is the work of paying attention, and that means paying full attention. Have you ever been around somebody who is folding laundry while they're talking to you, or maybe sorting through something, or doing the dishes, whatever it is? And sometimes that's fun. You're talking back and forth. He or she is off there doing something, you're doing something. But when it's important, you don't want to be over here kind of fooling with something. You want somebody to be looking at you. Just like right now, it's important that I look at you on my camera and pay full attention to you as much as I can, other than with my notes. So make eye contact, pay undivided attention, and focus on the other person's ideas. So yes, we can be making eye contact, but we can always also kind of be looking there, but we can be thinking, well, I'm not sure that I agree with this person, or what is it that I need to be saying next, because I really want to get this point that I have across, rather than paying full attention and listening. So I'm wondering if you have any questions about that. I love the questions that I got last week. At any rate, paying full attention is sometimes difficult because it's hard to look somebody in the eye, some people, and sometimes if you're embarrassed or you're a little concerned about what's being communicated, or if you're really uncomfortable, whatever it is. But when it's important, you want to be in the eyes. And the next part of communication I wanted to focus on today is emotional regulation. Now, this may be the crux of the most important intimate communication we have, and the most pressured professional or public communication that we have, that if we want to communicate accurately, respectfully, and completely, it's going to require those two things that I mentioned about paying full attention and the work of love. And the work of love in the personal sense is kindness and caring. In the professional sense, it's respectfulness. And this work requires two things: courage and self-discipline. So here we go with emotional regulation, self-regulation, self-discipline. So I'm going to read this little description. And incidentally, this handout is on my marriage counseling blog, and I'll give that to you before we sign off today. Okay. Expert communicators work especially hard to listen when they don't like what they're hearing. Ooh. Our natural response when we don't like what we're hearing is to defend ourselves, or to want to object, or to want to say that that's wrong and this is what I think, or I don't agree with that and this is why I don't agree with that. So listening when you don't like what you're hearing, if you're a professional listener, immediately you're going to pay even closer attention. I notice when I'm talking with Jack, or when I'm in the presence of a business colleague and they say something that is sensitive, or I disagree with, or I'm not sure I like where it's going, I'm going to have a stress response, an internal stress response. And that means that your heart probably starts beating a little faster. You may start sweating, start feeling a little anxious or a little pressured. And all of us have certain responses when we're feeling kind of stressed like that. We may start just talking. We may want to leave. We may want to yes, but. I'm so interested now in learning about other people, their views, because I'm interested in solving problems rather than in defending myself. I wish I'd always been that way, but I've learned to be that way. So when somebody's saying something that I disagree with, I'm very curious to find out how they think about that. What's the reasoning that they have behind that assumption, that belief, that opinion, so that I can be more discerning in terms of how I spend my time, how I interact with them, and then how I interact with them in terms of communicating, so that I am courteous and discerning. Maybe it's none of their business how I disagree with them. Or maybe it's critically important that I convey that at some point. But at this point, it's probably not the discerning thing to do. And you know, discernment is my favorite word for wisdom, which means you're connecting your smarts with your heart and making a decision that's wise. So, when someone is angry, critical, or complaining, especially when the complaint is about you, your behavior, what you've said, you may have a natural tendency to feel vulnerable, to become defensive because you feel vulnerable, and then to stop learning. Because the natural thing is, if we become defensive, we're putting up that defense, we're putting up a shield, we're gearing ourselves to fend something off, which is a pushing away or a closing down. We're not going to be able to communicate fully if we do that. So that means emotional self-regulation and holding whatever emotional response you have and remaining intelligent. So this gets in the way if you think that who you are is your feelings, or your feelings are important. What's important is doing the discerning thing, the wise thing, and deciding what's actually going to be effective, what's going to work, what's going to solve the problem, and how you're going to get in the direction that you think is the most effective. So, when we get defensive and we feel vulnerable and then end up stopping learning, the most important thing, thoughtful listening at this point, will not only diffuse a tense situation, it will help create greater understanding between you and that person. Not only greater understanding in terms of what I want to know and need to know, but it'll end up in terms of how I respond to them, a greater understanding for them of me as well. Although that may not happen right away. That may be in an hour from now or a week from now, whenever it is appropriate, if ever, because sometimes it's not ever important or effective to communicate what you really think to people. So when you demonstrate the ability to be perceptive and wise in disagreement, you earn respect and can facilitate resolution and or the return of good feelings. Do you know somebody that's truly got good perspective and wisdom in a situation that may be contentious or in disagreement? Have you ever watched somebody handle that? It immediately gets my attention because I know that they have a view of this that I don't know, which means I'm very interested in learning from them how they handle themselves with, it ends up feeling respectful or graceful or kind. And that leads us into one of the talks I'm going to do this summer on thinking skills, the mastery of thinking skills. I think I'm losing my, okay, there we are. When somebody is handling a cantankerous time or a conflictual time or a disagreement time or a topic that may be difficult to communicate, to talk about, to solve, watching somebody facilitate or interact with their own emotions regulated, where they continue to elicit, continue to listen, and hold down. Sometimes you can feel somebody's hackles rise, or you can feel that they get a little tense, and just like, ooh, what are they going to do? What do they choose to do? And then if you watch them become graceful and generous, it's very interesting to encounter someone like that. On the converse side, we've all encountered somebody who snaps back or plays what I call the bunny and rabbit yabbit game, where if someone says something that's disagreed with, the other person says, yeah, in essence, I hear you, but you're wrong because I think this, and that's different or opposite from what you think. That then starts the conversation in a direction where it's not going to go anywhere, because we've got two sides. And how is there going to be a dialogue or a discussion about that? And that means moving out of that place I was describing last week, where we have the two people that are this monologue and this monologue, into the place of where there's a dialogue going back and forth. That also means that you're going to have to take time to hear, and time to ask for more, empty the cup more, learn more about whatever it is this person is saying that you might disagree with. So do any of you out there have a topic that's hard for you, where you might disagree with somebody, or you've had to handle something that you disagreed about? Now, one of the things that comes to me is a couple that I talked to recently, and this is some of you probably have experienced this, and it's pretty classic. One is a neatnik, likes everything in its place, clean, tidy, and the other one is a messy person. And so how do you handle that kind of conflict when the neatnik is just hanging on and biting their tongue when they see something that's not where it's supposed to be. And then the messy person is feeling, it's like, oh dear, this person is going to be upset with me and maybe angry, or is going to criticize or judge. So we've got this conversation going to happen with the person who just can't take it that the simplest thing isn't put back where it's supposed to be, or isn't taken care of before they go off. One of the people just said, and you can probably see this, did you say that sometimes I should not tell him what I really think? Well, let me think about that one. Yes and no, and you understand discernment is not, for example, there are people who, and you probably know somebody like this, who believes that they need to tell absolutely the whole, frank, completely unadorned truth about everything. And sometimes if it's a difficult topic, if it's just laid on the table, it may be difficult, it may be worrisome, it may be frustrating, or the person may be angry about it. And one of the simple examples of this that I use is, we use different language, we use a different voice, we use a different style of communicating when we're talking with a 9-year-old. We don't tell them the whole truth about certain things because it's not appropriate. Well, you know, it's like, how old are they when we tell them there's no Santa Claus, right? So it just depends on what you need to communicate. Should I not tell them what I really think? Well, if you are thinking in the way that's resentful or critical or angry, and you're thinking negative thoughts using put-downs and bad names for them, no, you should not. Because that's not going to get you in anything constructive, and it's not okay to use put-downs or bad names or criticisms or judgments. That requires that we have emotional self-regulation, because calling names, criticism, judgments, put-downs just don't take us in any direction that's constructive. However, if you need to tell them honestly about something that you think, and it's going to be difficult, that means you surround it with cushion statements. This means communicating with kindness and wisdom and discernment. So, give me an example. Tell me an example of something that's hard for you to communicate. The person said, but isn't honesty important even when I'm mad? Ah, good question. Yes, honesty is important. And yet, when you're mad, you're probably not going to say it with wisdom, discernment, kindness, and effectiveness. Mad at something he's done. No. When you're angry, that is probably the worst time to communicate. Anger is, frankly, very unintelligent. If we think about the parts of our brain and how we communicate, we've got the cerebral cortex, which is the frontal lobe that you're hearing me speak from right now, where it's logical, informational, intelligent. It's the human brain. Then we've got the mammalian brain, which is kind of in the middle of the skull. And that mammal brain is where the emotional system lies. That's when we talk about the heart, that's the mammal or mammalian brain, because all of our animals have that brain. If you think about a dog, our favorite mammal, of course, you know that, I know I did something wrong. You'll see it on his face. And if she's happy to see you, you know her tail is wagging. So that's the mammal brain. It is not who we are. Our feelings are just our emotional response to what we think or experience. Then we've got the old brain, the reptile brain, which is that the brainstem that connects with the base of the skull down the spinal column to your gut, which is your gut instinct, your belly brain. That's the reptile brain that puts us into action towards pleasure, away from pain. If there's food, we're going to go towards it. If there's a threat, we're going to go away from it. Anger is not an emotion. Anger is in the belly brain where we become defensive, and we're going to either go towards what we want or away from what we don't want. And if we are threatened, we will fight. And getting angry is us getting ready to fight to defend ourselves. That means that when we're angry, we're not thinking with our intelligence or with our kindness from our heart's empathy. We're thinking about defending ourselves under threat. And that means that anger in the simplistic sense is not intelligent. It's from that reptile brain. It's about as smart as a lizard. So when we're angry, we're probably not going to be successful at good communication. And that means, like I mentioned last week, remember that taking a time out where we stop the conversation, stop the interaction. And if you don't like something that he's doing, you know that criticizing and confronting probably aren't going to do anything other than escalate bad feelings and turn it into a conflict rather than a discussion to solve the problem. So then I'm sure you're saying, well, then what do I do when he's doing something that he's done something that's made me angry? Which means something that you dislike, something that has threatened you, something that is pushing him away from you. Do you want to solve that problem? Do you want to figure out how to have a discussion about alleviating that? The best way to do it is when you're quiet and when you're connected, when he can really hear you and hear you with an open heart. Hear you because he cares for you. And usually if this is your beloved, your partner, somebody who cares for you, they are interested in what might cause you pain and to protect you from that. They are interested in seeing the smile on your face and having you around as a happy person. And you and I know that what our men want more than anything is, if my woman is happy and she's smiling, I know I'm doing a good job. So I figure that's the least I can do, is be a smiling and cheerful person when I'm around him, as much as I can. So if he's done something that's made you mad, then that means probably something has hurt you or betrayed you or criticized you, made you feel bad about yourself, or scared you in some way or made you nervous or anxious. And so it's important for you to understand what it is that's going on inside yourself and what it is that you need to ask for. Sometimes the first thing to do is to find out where he's coming from. And usually that's the best bet. If he's done something that's making you feel bad, usually our guys are good guys and they don't do things consciously to make us feel bad unless you're really in some kind of a conflictual relationship where you're pretty cantankerous with each other. And that's not good. We want to stop that. That's a whole other story, isn't it? Your first approach is to find out what it is that he wants. So I know that sometimes the idea comes up where there's a pattern where, and I'm seeing this with quite a few couples right now, the younger ones, where they know how to be friends and they've got a relationship and they're together, but they don't think of themselves as a team, as partners, as that, what I think of as twin souls. Where whenever you think about something or do something, you can't not think of your partner because you're now a team, you're a partnership, you're a married couple or you're a bonded couple. I find that really and truly we don't have many good role models showing us that. But what happens is they're looking for a good life and happiness, and sometimes one or both of them is going out at night with their friends. So let's just take, for example, this woman who, she's been single for maybe 10 years, and she's got great girlfriends, and they have a great time with each other, and they typically go out and do something once a week together. And he feels frustrated that after a while, that it's going to bars and it's hanging out with their girlfriends, but it's also, you know, what kind of bachelor girls do, not what adult women or women that are doing quality things do. And he starts to resent that. Then what does he do? I mean, she says, but this is what I've been doing for 10 years. I've been having fun with my girlfriends. And so the first thing that he would need to do is understand what it is that she's looking for. So, first thing is girlfriends. All of us want to spend time with our friends, and that's cool. And if he were to say, yes, I can understand that you want to spend time with your girlfriends, and I like that about you, that you've got friends, and I'm comfortable with that. And then for her to say, well, what is it that you're not comfortable with? And he can say, well, I'm not comfortable with it just being at bars with, you know, drinking. And she'll say, but that's what we've always done. And then he'll say, well, I guess maybe the big deal is I'm afraid that it's taking you away from me. And that may be true if the couple doesn't have time with each other as regularly as she has time with her girlfriends. And of course it's the other way around, where he goes out with his friends and she feels kind of left alone because she isn't going out with her girlfriends and they don't have time together as a couple. So the question says, but I thought I heard you say it was okay to not tell him everything I'm mad about. Yes, because anger doesn't solve any problems. However, what you're mad about needs to be solved, not put under the carpet and just avoided because it'll come back up again, right? So for example, if you're mad about him leaving his clothes on the floor and never putting them in the clothes hamper, you could say, you know, it really frosts me when you put your clothes on the floor. Don't you care about me? Haven't you heard anything I've said? Don't you care about how our house is? You're behaving like an 18-year-old that has no mother, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm sure it could be a lot more heated than what I've just described. At that point, he's going to feel criticized and like there's something wrong with him, like he's being put down and made fun of, whatever it is. So to tell him in that way is probably not going to get you very far, unless he's going to be begrudging. So the better attack, not really attack, is it? The better approach to something like that is to tell him honestly, not what makes you angry, but how it makes you feel with cushion statements. So like this. Cushion statements before and then the complaint and then cushion statements after. Because if there's a problem, what we want to get to is a complaint with a request for change. And if it's a tough complaint with a request for change, we want to put cushion statements above it and below it. So I'm going to use the laundry on the dirty clothes on the floor as an example. Okay, I notice he's left his clothes on the floor again. And I'll say, sweetie, can I talk to you for a minute? Yep, sure. I don't want to make you feel bad about this, and I don't mean to criticize you at all. And I know that you really agree with me about our home, and that you like it to be neat and clean too. And I noticed your clothes on the floor, and I wish you'd pick them up and put them in the dirty clothes like we've talked about. I know that we can do this, and I know you don't want me to get mad at you, and I don't want to get mad at you either. Is there something that we could talk about, or something else that we can do to make sure that I help you get your clothes in the dirty clothes hamper? So there you go. That was cushion statement, complaint with a request for change, and then a little more cushion statements. Does that make sense? Because you're telling him what you're mad about, and you're not telling him that you're mad. You're saying, this is a complaint that I have, and I'm requesting a change. Does that make sense? So we're not talking about anger, we're not talking about confronting, we're not talking about making him bad and wrong or feeling attacked. We're looking for the change. In other words, we're looking for the solution. We're not looking to make him feel our anger. We're looking for how do we solve this problem so that it's resolved and we go on. Oh, she says, I see. Thank you. Yay! Okay, so let's look at this emotional self-regulation. So number one, notice your defensiveness. So when he drops his clothes on the floor, notice what goes on inside you. It's like, there it goes again. This really is frustrating, and I hate my house to be disorganized for various reasons. It may be that you grew up in a house that was disorganized, or you didn't, however it was, but it bothers you. And the immature thing is to immediately go and say, look at what you did. First, notice that it bothers you, and decide what you're going to do as a team to solve the problem. Because I mean, most of us have encountered kids where they don't put their clothes in the hamper. And then if they get yelled at, maybe they do it, but it really doesn't become a self-regulatory habit. So the first thing is we want to notice our defensiveness about something so that the defensiveness doesn't determine how we communicate. We want to maintain respectful listening. So at that point, you want to listen to him and find out what he's going to say. Now, it's really interesting. Sometimes people say things that you wouldn't even expect. So if you had communicated that complaint with a request for change, what might he have said? So, oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't even notice that I threw my clothes on the floor. I need to pay more attention to that. I'm not sure how to do that. Or he might say, oh yeah, I did. I really don't care, but I know you care. Or he might say, yeah, I did. And, I thought about it, but I was busy. I was thinking about something else that I needed to get done, and it just didn't feel like it was that important for me to go back and do it. But if means that much to you, then I'll go back and put them in the clothes hamper right now and see if you can help me get this habit going. So that's a kind of a nice intelligent civil exchange about a complaint and a request for change. And you may need to remind him 2 or 3 times, and if you do it in a kind way, then he'll say, yeah, I really want to get this habit. Thanks for helping me. So you want to maintain respectful listening. And if you're in a conflictual topic, you want to withstand the criticism or the complaint, like I modeled that he did in that moment. If somebody criticizes you or complains, you want to withstand it. You want to hold it and want to be robust enough to say, well, let me look at myself. Let me look at what happened there. Yeah, I see you're complaining about something. And tell me more about that. Or even though you're feeling nervous or stressed or your heart's pounding and you're feeling anxious, to say, to withstand it, to hold it, which means, remember that concept about the ultimately loving thing to do of completely paying attention requires us to be self-disciplined and courageous. And here it is in a phrase. Withstand the criticism or the complaint. Be courageous and self-disciplined. The ultimate language of love. The ultimate language of respect for another person. When you can hold that and the other person knows that you're withstanding and you're disciplining yourself, they're going to be able to trust you. You know, there are 2 kinds of trusting in these kinds of communications. You know, sometimes you can't trust people because they just say the nice thing. And I love it when I have friends that are strong enough and clear enough to be honest about the complaint and the request for change, rather than covering up or putting aside. Then when I notice that they're a pleaser, I know I can't trust what they say because they may not be feeling comfortable, and then I don't really know what's going on or what they need or how to take their discomfort. If they're not forthcoming, we can try to interpret that, but only try. So we want to withstand the criticism or the complaint and just hold it, learn from it. And it may take a time, you know, a few minutes. It may take a few days for you to kind of think through what that meant and what really needs to be done about it. Sometimes it's hard to get a complaint or criticism, and the first thing we want to do is protect ourselves and kind of say, well, I'm right, or you're wrong, or I'm not going to give in on this, or whatever it is. Somebody said hello. Hi. Got a question for me? So withstanding that criticism or the complaint allows us to be solution-oriented and respectful with it. Where we may want to be able to get past the stubbornness to where we can take our responsibility for our part in it and either forgive ourselves or apologize for whatever we did. Apologies are so disarming. They take away the sense of the threat and clears the way for deeper understanding and communication. You may or may not get forgiveness, and that's up to the other person. But you're always in charge of giving forgiveness, that is the strong thing to do. And the last part of this, continue to listen to learn. One of the hardest places to continue to listen to learn is when you feel confronted or disapproved of or disagreed with, and you want to hold on to what you know or feel is right. If you can take that and put it aside, knowing that nobody's going to change your mind about what you think is right, and you can always go back to it. And if you're in a place, sometimes I know I like to just, if it's in a large, like say at a city council meeting, you write down your note about what you're thinking and what you want to say, and then you return to listening and eliciting and asking more, or somehow encouraging more so that you learn more. And notice the example that I gave earlier was learning more, because it's hard to mind read. It's hard for us to know exactly what the other person is thinking, or what their viewpoint is, or through what beliefs or filters their thoughts or their words or their opinions come through. And I find, especially as a counselor, that it's really special when somebody says something and I couldn't have predicted it. And that the only way that I can get those thoughts, and sometimes it's the way people phrase things, where it shows me what they really believe and what they really treasure. Unless I pay attention, unless I listen, unless I am interested in learning more. That place of learning, it really is connected with a deep soul's desire that is curiosity. All of us have deep curiosity if we've put aside our need to control, our agendas, our defense, our worries, our concern. We come back to that place where we really want to know, where we're curious, where we want to learn, we want to know better. That's such an honest, vulnerable place, curiosity and learning. When you move into that, immediately when you're curious, you move right out of those moments when you feel too self-conscious, or you feel like you need to defend yourself, or say your part. You can always go back to your part. But staying in that willingness to learn and being curious spot is disarming not only to yourself, but in the interaction, where something softens in the other person because they know you're really listening. You can tell, can't you? When somebody really listens to you, does nothing but honestly and openly listen to you and is willing to learn how you think about it and how you say it. All right, does anyone have any more questions about this particular topic? We're looking at eye contact and keeping focused on the person that you're communicating with, and then the emotional self-regulation so that you can be courteous, you can keep control of your feelings, and you can be open to learning more and withstanding the criticism or the difference or the complaint. Any more questions about that? If not, we will sign off and we'll look at the next piece of communication next week. And I also wanted to give you, let me copy it over here for you, the address where you can find this handout for, let me put it here for you. If you go to this web address, marriagecounseling.wordpress.com, you'll find the handouts that I use when I teach couples communication. And this week I finished one of the classes, and I'll be starting to teach a 4-week class. I do this monthly for couples or individuals if you want to learn more about communication. Come to my private practice office, and for 4 weeks we study the most important tools that I think couples need or people need for excellent communication. Question, are you doing this again sometime? This tonight, you mean? This broadcast from the Red Room? Yes. Every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Absolutely. I'm here. It's free. Anybody can listen. Just tell them to go to my website and put in your name and your email address. You'll be on my mailing list and you'll get announcements. But yes, you can show up, or anybody can show up here 8 p.m. on Wednesday nights, and I'll be here to talk and to teach and to answer your questions. Yes, it's always free. My couples classes are in my private practice office. They're not free, of course. And I mentor couples in the most important techniques and methods of communicating. And as a marriage counselor, as a counselor, I think that the most important thing in the world is our intimate relationships, our partnerships. And when people come to me, it usually has something to do with communication. So that's why I choose number one to teach communication. And it's a little difficult when people come to me for marriage counseling or couples counseling, because of course I want to listen to them, I want to hear what's going on, I want to kind of be a detective, and I often don't have time to completely teach all of these methods because, you know, they told us, if you've got a relationship, if you've got a marriage, if you want to keep your relationship, you need to work on it. And the most important thing to do is to pay full attention, which means communicate. And I'd love for you to be able to have the methods, the tools, and the how-tos to communicate this well. And that's why I teach these couples classes. I teach a lot. It's mentoring. It is not counseling. And mostly I take the time to convey methods and information. Any more questions? Otherwise, I'm signing off from the Red Room, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 8 o'clock. We're good then. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your questions. Heather, I'd like to know how you're doing this. Thank you. How I'm doing this is thanks to my fabulous husband, Jack. He set this software up for me so that I could do the Red Room. And I don't know off the top of my head how he did that, but if you will email me, because all I have is this number, I don't know who you are. If you will email me and ask me this, I'll ask Jack and I'll find the source of this Red Room software for you. And my email is heatherc@heathercarlisle.com, or just go to my website, heathercarlisle.com, and you'll find me. And I'll just type that in here for you right now. Did I do it right? I did. That's my email address. Email me there, and I'll ask Jack, and we'll tell you what the software is. Thank you so much, and good night from the Red Room. I'll see you next week.